Ari TV and Conceptual TV present Новая Русь.
The Ukrainian soldiers who have been through these few months of battles have learned how to fight. However, they are still not good at war. This has something to do with the absolute incompetence of the senior commanders in the Ukrainian army. They treat the rank-and-file soldiers like cannon fodder. In July 2014, Kiev announced the third wave of mobilization. And where are those recruited during the two previous waves? The mothers of Ukrainian soldiers will not see their sons again. They're gone. Their wives have become widows, but are still unaware of it. The Ukrainian leaders are throwing dust in our eyes, hiding the number of losses and downplaying the figures to a fraction of the real ones. Soldiers of the National Guard of Ukraine are digging mass graves in order to hinder identification. We don't see any logic at all in their actions, tactics and strategy, because they are just blindly driving people like cattle to the slaughterhouse.
Звонили ихним матерям, ихним любимым, спрашивали, как они. Они говорят, что они живы, стоят на позициях. Так вот, матеря, любимые сестры, пусть знают, они убиты.
Роют ямы, раздевают людей до трусов, закидывают в эти ямы, с помощью взрывчатки взрывают эти могилы.
Вот это ребята украинской армии, которые пытались прорваться, которые гибнут здесь ни за что.
According to unconfirmed reports, in July alone, the Ukrainian army lost more than 8,000 soldiers. They perished in traps set by the fighters of Novorossiya. Numerous accounts of surrendered Ukrainian soldiers recreate the same clear picture. They were misled and then dumped. Even when their intelligence has detected the enemy's multiple launch rocket systems, their commanders told them to observe.
4 часа приехала колонна, 4:15 колонны не стало.
И они приехали на четкую позицию, только стали, и град валил именно туда, где они стали.
Не знающие обстановки, наше начальство отправило нас сюда просто на бой. Или пушечное мясо, или продали.
Начали бомбить свои же отряды. Так вы, получается, попали под свой обстрел, да? Под свой обстрел. Вас обстреляли свои? Да.
Все эти операции нельзя согласовывать со штабом АТО, потому что они моментально сольют информацию. Если бы, Господи помилуй, мы бы рассказали, как и куда мы едем, нас бы, наверное, сегодня здесь не было.
One gets the impression that Ukrainian soldiers have sometimes been deliberately put under militia artillery fire and cast off without reinforcements when they became trapped. What is this? Stupidity or deliberate murder? It seems that the stupidity of commanders is only what is on the surface. After all, these top commanders have been appointed to their positions by someone. Someone has approved their strategic plans, and someone has not punished them for the huge losses in men and military equipment. So, the goals of those who set the course of events are consistent with the result.
Сила за вашу позицию, за ваш героизм.
In addition, this war is about destroying a population, not just those who have taken up arms to stop the invasion, but the entire population of the Lugansk and Donetsk republics. This is confirmed by bombings targeting residential quarters of Lugansk, Donetsk and other towns of the Donbass.
Как показывает вообще статистика, мирных жителей гибнет в десятки раз больше, чем военных. Какая же это война? Это не война, это убийство самое настоящее.
The question is, in whose interests are they acting now? You can fight with terrorists, but why destroy infrastructure? Sponsors have set the task to clear the area completely of population, and, worst of all, it is Ukrainians themselves doing the job, the destruction of the country. We can see how the country is being destroyed by the hands of its own people. What are the reasons behind this war of fratricide, one that is absurd as regards the extent of its chaos and violence? Political scientists and military analysts have referred to a number of reasons for instigating such a slaughter. The first one is on the surface and aims at creating a zone of instability adjacent to Russia, weakening its economic and trade relations and undermining political influence. Besides, should the pro-Russian republics of Novorossiya lose the war, our country will be surrounded by military bases and missile launchers in a much narrower circle. Of course, from an economic point of view, Europe is also not interested in having an area of chaos near its borders and deteriorated relations with oil and gas donor Russia. But the dictate of the USA, the global hegemon, has forced them to enter the game against our country while disregarding their own interests. The first reason is connected with the second one, involving Russia in an open war. In recent years, the Kremlin has done many things that have caused the indignation of several global players. In particular, the strict stance taken by Russia and China, which made the United States withdraw withdraw its navy from the coast of Syria. Of course, their damaged ego called for retaliation, and so arose the need to invent reasons to accuse the Russian authorities of war crimes. One way or another, the Russian Federation has to be directly involved in the conflict, so they are sparing no effort to achieve that. There is a mobilized army of 500,000, which they are relying on, and they need to equip it with old Soviet-era weapons, and the task of this army is to die heroically in the first battle with the army of the Russian Federation.
Третья причина чисто экономическая.
The third reason is a purely economic one. The fact is that the regions of Poltava, Kharkov, Donetsk and Lugansk include areas of shale gas production. Moreover, Donbas is a widely known depository of minerals, rock salt, quartzite, sandstone, limestone, and of course, top quality coal, which the words metallurgy still relies on. In actual fact, this is what Ukraine was warned about, that their industry is of no use to Europe. Europe needs a workforce, needs consumers, needs raw materials, but all the rest is evil. The ascent to power of pro-Western politicians in Kiev made transnational corporations like Shell think that now all the obstacles to their operations in the Ukraine have been removed. However, very soon it became obvious that the southeast of the country is populated by another people, and this people, A, does not want to be part of Ukraine, and B, does not want to see its land polluted by chemicals in the interests of nobody knows who. We emphasize that this is not just about freshly baked entities, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics. It's about a large part of the population which thinks differently to the people of the rest of Ukraine. Therefore, it may have been decided not only to destroy the army of Novorossiya, but also to mop up the whole area to cleanse it of its entire population.
Девочка осталась 20 лет, парню 21. Собрались крестить, скажите, как это понять?
The abomination in what Ukrainian death squads are doing is that they are fighting against totally innocent people. There have been almost no casualties among the militia. The fourth reason is both cynical and extremely simple. The Kievan authorities no longer have any need for either revolutionaries or young enthusiasts. They have done their job and have now become dangerous to the regime. Indeed, should the economic situation in the country deteriorate, which is inevitable, the young can make another attempt to overthrow the government. This is why they are being sent to war without any worries about logistics and competent command. The more hot-tempered young men, especially those who took part in the Maidan events, are killed, the more secure it will be for the country's leaders. Worldwide revolutionary experience shows that the first coup can easily be followed by a second. If the Kievan junta leaders were unaware of the fact, they have certainly been advised of this by their Western curators. Therefore, it is quite likely that today the new Ukrainian rulers are actively preparing to suppress popular unrest should it occur. And for sure, the level of brutality they would show would make the Maidan activists find a key word for spineless President Yanukovych and his riot police unit. In addition, a name given to EU integration supporters are planning to turn Ukraine into a third-rate agrarian country. Therefore, they need far fewer empty bellies to feed here than there are now. Sure, maintaining gas pipes requires just a few men, the rest are all in excess. This may also explain the fact why recommendations of foreign partners do not envisage for President Poroshenko any options for a peaceful solution to the issue of the southeast. Just like the popular joke goes, the United States will fight with Russia right down to the last Ukrainian.
Чистейшей воды геноцид славянского генофонда. Об этом свидетельствует порядок комплектования.
What's going on is a pure, unadulterated genocide of the Slavic gene pool. This is evidenced by the order of ranking of the Ukrainian troops. The elderly, who have been called up to serve in the National Guard, remain in training centers and collection points, while youths from 18 to 35 years old are driven to the front line to be slaughtered there.
А возраст в основном какой?
Возраст в среднем от 20 до 40 лет.
Пятая причина.
The fifth reason brings us into the realm of forbidden knowledge. The media have seen some reports of instances of the organs of dead Ukrainian soldiers being sold abroad. To those who think this is an isolated case, a display of savagery in just one country, we advise you to read a book entitled On Conspiracy by the well-known Russian political scientists Andrei Fursov and Yelena Ponomaryova. All around the world, should any military conflict emerge, the zone immediately becomes a point of supply for human organs. This cannibalistic trade beats the profits of even drug trafficking. This is why it sees large investments from large elite clans devoid of human principles. Not long ago, a special commission of the EU officially acknowledged human organ trafficking in the conflict zone in Kosovo. However, it also provided a comment that for the purpose of organ extraction, only about a dozen people had been slaughtered. But any adult will understand without explanation that if a business mechanism is established, then it is not meant for a dozen purchase and sale transactions. It is meant to work on a commercial scale. There is no doubt that the industrial scale production of human organs is already underway in Ukraine as well. It is quite likely that the ardent hearts of Ukrainian revolutions will end up beating in the chests of the European moneybags who sponsored the revolution, a profitable investment in their own health.
Шестая причина.
The sixth reason is beyond logic and rational argument, as is the Ukraine military conflict itself. Everyone must decide for himself to believe it or not. No matter how cynical and inhumane the above reasons may seem, they are fit for a cold, pragmatic mind. However, upon examining all the conditions of the military operations in Donbas, one quickly comes to the conclusion that their true goals are not only beyond human logic, but also beyond the materialistic outlook. Judge for yourself. One of the parties suffers an unforgivable loss in fighters, but rather than revising its strategy and replacing its commanders, it simply recruits more and more new soldiers. All attempts to reach an armistice and peaceful settlement are simply ignored. Instead of detecting and destroying enemy troop concentrations, the Ukrainian military focuses its firepower on residential areas. As a result, civilians are dying, often pensioners and single women. Today, thousands of people have already begun to understand that the purpose of this war is not to win, but to maximize the number of casualties. But why? We've more than once expressed the idea that Russia, the Russian people, and more broadly, the Slavic super-ethnos, are participating in an ancient mystical war. At stake in the battle is the very existence of mankind. The Russian people, regardless of either religious belief or political opinion, is a vehicle for the idea of justice, one which ensures the immunity of the entire population of the earth to processes of degradation. And, of course, the strongest aspiration of those who fight against us is to immerse us in fratricidal slaughter, in which one part of the Russian people destroys another.
В основе пути зла, в основе пути насилия,
at the heart of the path of evil and the path of violence lies the principle of divide and rule. And accordingly, the best way is to incite one part of the people against another. When speaking of victims of the war, we are referring to the superficial meaning of the word жертва. In Russian it has two meanings, victim and sacrifice. That is, people who suffer serious bodily injuries or death. At the same time, we are losing sight of the original meaning of the word sacrifice as a religious act. But it is the original meaning of the word that allows us to understand the true meaning of the word. Blood is energy and stamina. Blood contains the soul. So this is an offering to the malign forces, the asuras. War is a rite of sacrifice. The ritual of sacrifice, in one form or another, is to be found in all religious and magical systems. Through this ritual, the one who sacrifices seeks to establish a connection with a supernatural being, to gain strength from them, or to ask them for favors. The ritual peaked during the now vanished civilization of the Aztecs, in the period of its decline. Aztec warriors went to battle not for gold, not for land, and not even for slaves. Their goal was to take as many captives as possible for bloody sacrifices. The Aztecs believed that this was exactly what made the sun move across the sky, and for the sake of this, whole tribes were exterminated. The victims and the human blood are, of course, what the devil revels in. The devil who, from the beginning, is called in the scriptures the father of lies and a murderer. Victims should be as plentiful as possible. In terms of mysticism, it does not matter whether these victims, sacrifices, are from among one's own men or not. Victims should be as plentiful as possible. The thing is that the devil, this cold, homicidal force, has no feelings of sympathy and knows no division between his own men and aliens. And now this black magic ritual is being performed in the Donetsk steppe, and the ones being sacrificed are the young citizens of Ukraine. Not only propaganda, cynicism and internal treason are being put to use, but techniques of an occult nature as well.
Начало войны 14 апреля
Starting a war on the 14th of April 2014, from the perspective of astrology, is doomed to failure. It takes a lot to find such a dramatically unfortunate day to embark on hostilities. History tends to repeat itself, and apparently another civilization in North America that stands at the edge of the abyss has, in desperation, resorted to a blatant primitive ritual in the hope that the sun above it will not cease to shine.
В каком-то смысле жертвоприношение, ритуальное жертвоприношение является...
In a sense, sacrifice, ritual sacrifice, is a driver of history, as it is understood by certain, so to say, initiated persons. But it is enough to carry out the strange flooding in the Berlin Underground at the end of the war, when everything was already over, to drown 200,000 civilians in the city of Berlin. The mystically minded leaders of the Third Reich were still trying to cling to this sacrifice. Yet another sacrifice was to be offered. And then, as they had hoped, maybe some divine unknown, as they called the mystical forces they were appealing to, would help.
Change has come to America. True strength of our nation comes not from the might of our arms or the scale of our wealth, but from the enduring power of our ideals, democracy, liberty, opportunity, and unyielding hope. That's not so. Tell you, Mama! It can't happen without you, without a new spirit of service, a new spirit of sacrifice. So let us summon a new spirit. Sing!
Свободного использования в вашем регионе русского языка. Совместным проектом с нашими партнерами из Евросоюза по созданию рабочих мест на востоке Украины. С перспективой инвестиций. С проектом программы по экономической реконструкции Донбасса. Сегодня нам нужен легитимный партнер по диалогу.
I am forever grateful for what you've sacrificed to get it done. Thank you. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America. Дякую, друзі! Слава Україні!
For skeptics, there is yet another meaning of the word жертва. It means a voluntary abstinence from something that one either values highly or is used to. Oddly enough, this meaning is also relevant to Ukraine because through military action, it is voluntarily rejecting a whole range of valuable assets. For one, economic development. The employable adult male population, instead of working for the benefit of their motherland, are being killed or injured in this senseless fratricidal war. Ukraine is forsaking two regions whose populations will never forget the carnage and will never be able to be part of a single nation with those who once came to kill them. Ukraine is forsaking Russia, not only an important economic and strategic partner, but also a powerful cultural and spiritual center of civilization. Therefore, from whatever angle we look at what is happening in Ukraine, there can be just one name for it: sacrifice. And the most upsetting and humiliating thing is that this sacrifice, for the umpteenth time in history, of a Slavic people is being performed by their own hand. So, why is it happening? How is it that people of the same blood, sometimes kinsmen, set about killing each other by the will of unknown forces? Who brought us to such a state? The overall conclusion may be as follows. For centuries we have been weaned away from thinking independently and on a large scale. The only people who have been allowed to come to power are unworthy of it in their spiritual and mental qualities. This is why we have let slip those moves in the larger game of civilization which have led us to the phase of fratricide. In order to learn how to play the game by one's own rules, one needs to have a clear vision of the historic process. One must be resistant to any kind of propaganda, but the most important thing is that everyone must find the answers for themselves to the eternal question, who am I and what was I born into this world for?